Welcome everyone. So glad you could come. Rosh Chodesh Sivan. Today is Rosh Chodesh Sivan. It started last night and it's continuing until today. And it's actually a very significant month for me personally because it's the month of my Hebrew birthday, which is 19 Sivan, and it's also the month of my wedding anniversary, which is 20 Sivan. So that's very exciting. But in a larger sense, it is also very significant for the Jewish people as a whole, not just me, because it's the month that we celebrate the receiving of the Torah on Mount Sinai with the holiday of Shavuot, which this year begins on Thursday night. And I'm sure you're all prepping your cheesecake recipes as we speak. So we'll talk a little bit more about Shavuot in a minute. First, let's go to the Torah sources for Rosh Chodesh Sivan, which can be found in Exodus 19. So this is the beginning of that chapter. B'chodesh hashlishi letzet b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim b'yom hazeh ba'u midbar Sinai. In the third month after the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, that same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. And when they were departed from Rephidim and were come into the wilderness of Sinai, they encamped in the wilderness, and there Israel encamped before the mount. And then following Psukim, I'm just going to describe a little bit of the conversation, and I'll read a little bit of the verse, but I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a few different verses. But basically what we have here is a conversation between God and Moshe. So this is God speaking to Moshe, commanding him with instructions about how to speak to the people of Israel. So Hashem says, "If you will hearken unto my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own treasure from among all peoples. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak unto the children of Israel." Moshe takes Hashem's words and he brings them to the people of Israel at the bottom of the mountain, and all the people answered together and said, "All that the Lord has spoken we will do." So what's the pshat, the basic meaning here? What's happening in these psukim? Basically, Rosh Chodesh Sivan, the children of Israel, after a few months of wandering in the desert, have finally arrived at Mount Sinai. And this is the fateful place where they will be transformed from a people into a nation. God says to the people, "You have seen what I've done for you in Egypt. If you honor me and you keep my laws, I will make you a holy nation." And we, the Jewish people, respond to God through Moshe saying, "We accept." So this is a huge moment and a very formational moment for us as a people. And there's something else going on here too that requires a little bit of a deeper look into the Hebrew and speaks to our coming together as a people in a really beautiful way. So let's just look back quickly at the second verse of the chapter and take a little bit of dive into the Hebrew. We read this briefly, but we're just going to read it again in the Hebrew. Vayisu mi-Rephidim, and when they departed from Rephidim, V'yavo midbar Sinai, and they came to the wilderness of Sinai. V'yachanu b'midbar, and they encamped in the wilderness. V'yichan sham Yisrael, and the people of Israel encamped there, neged hahar, in front of the mountain. So the Hebrew word used for encamped here is vayichan. And the significance in traditional teachings is that the singular of the word, not the plural form of the verb, is used, even though we're talking about somewhere between 600,000 and a few million people. The numbers are not exact. But according to our tradition, this one word, vayichan, teaches that the Jewish people were totally united at this moment. And we accepted the Torah as if with a single mind and a single heart. And that may have been the very last time that all of the Jewish people were ever united on one thing. But we don't have to dwell on that. It's a very beautiful and significant moment for the Jewish people. So now that we've learned about the Torah sources of the month of Sivan, let's situate the moment in the context of the Jewish year, which we always try to do at these Rosh Chodesh sessions. We're in the third month if we're counting from Nisan. And Nisan, as you will recall, we were freed from enslavement and we left Egypt, which is a very painful and difficult process, the birthing process, so to speak. In the following month, ER, we were in a transitional stage. Anyone who was in the last month's session will remember we were talking about this moment of transition, this time for pausing, reflecting, healing from our trauma, and preparing to start the next stage in our journey as a nation. And now in Sivan, we have fully arrived at this huge moment of renewal and abundance and prosperity and blessing. And that is really what Sivan is about, the month of Sivan. It is about being in a place to receive these incredible blessings. So let's use this idea of receiving blessings to transition to a discussion of Shavuot. Now, I think that Shavuot is not a holiday that gets a lot of love. To be honest, I don't think I'd ever heard of it when I was growing up. It certainly wasn't like Pesach or Rosh Hashanah or Hanukkah when we celebrated with family and traditional foods. My family did not really celebrate it at all. Even though it's one of the 3 pilgrimage holidays, it's just not as, I guess, mainstream as some of the others. But actually, Shavuot is incredibly important. So along with Pesach and Sukkot, as I just said, it's one of the 3 yearly pilgrimage festivals when Jews, when the temple is still standing, were commanded to travel to Jerusalem to give offerings at the temple in ancient times. And in ancient times, Shavuot was a harvest holiday. The offerings that were made at the temple were made up of the first fruits of the harvest, which are called the bikurim. Now that the temple is no longer standing, the holiday of Shavuot has a bit of a different significance. The main theme of Shavuot today, and the reason why it's so important, is that it marks the first covenant between God and the Jewish people, and the giving of the most central and significant set of teachings in our tradition, possibly in the world, the Torah. We are the people of the book, right? We're nothing without the Torah. In fact, Shavuot is known in davening and in benching as the holiday of Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of the giving of our Torah. And there's a really beautiful teaching from the Kotzker Rebbe about this phrase, which I think fits in nicely with our shir today. The Kotzker Rebbe was asked, why is Shavuot called Zman Matan Torah, the time that the Torah was given, rather than the time the Torah was received? He answered, the giving took place on one day, but the receiving takes place at all times. So here we encounter this idea of a one-time transaction, so to speak, like a moment of giving and receiving that occurred in a historical sense, one moment. But we're also talking about an eternal gift. We're talking about a sense of receiving and blessing that is never ending for the Jewish people, that continues from the very first moment that we've received the Torah at Sinai until this very moment today, right now, when we are gathered together on Zoom learning Torah together. And we'll continue, God willing, for many, many, many generations after us. So for this reason, the idea of Zman Matan Torah, one of the most time-honored traditions associated with Shavuot is Tikkun Leil, which is all-night learning. It's an all-night Torah study session that takes place on the first night of Shavuot. So a lot of communities will organize classes and lectures and partnered study sessions that will last all night long. And in Jerusalem, in normal years, when there's not a global pandemic, thousands and thousands of people will walk to the Kotel at sunrise through the streets of Jerusalem, streaming, after learning all night, streaming to daven and pray at the Western Wall in honor of the ancient pilgrimage festival. So I don't think that's happening this year, but hopefully in years to come. So while the idea of staying up all night learning might not sound like the most fun activity to all of us, it's meant to emphasize this idea that just being engaged in Torah is one of the sweetest and most joyous blessings that we as Jews have the privilege to enjoy. So it's a never ending, it's an eternal blessing that we must continue to appreciate and engage with. The Tikkun Leil actually has Kabbalistic roots, like a few traditions in Shavuot. It began in the 16th century in Sfat. And another really beautiful Kabbalistic idea about Shavuot is this concept of God marrying the Jewish people. So the original covenant at Sinai was seen by the Kabbalists as like a formal marriage covenant, with the Torah acting as the ketubah document. So here we have another strengthening of this idea of covenant and commitment between Hashem and the Jewish people. Let's see. Okay. Another very cool thing about Shavuot is that it's one of the few Jewish holidays that explicitly celebrate Jewish women in the Bible. We have a lot of great Jewish heroines, and we can learn about them on our own time, but this is a holiday on which we read the Megillah of Ruth, the story of Ruth, which is a story of two women and their struggles and triumph Another example of a holiday where women are celebrated would be Purim when we read Megillat Esther. But there aren't a lot of other examples, unfortunately. Many of you have probably heard of the story of Ruth and Naomi. It's a really beautiful story. It's often used to show how important and honored converts are in Judaism. Ruth was the first convert to Judaism. She was a Moabite, and she eventually became the ancestor of King David and the ancestor of the entire royal Israelite heritage, which is really significant. And from Megillat Ruth is where we hear this famous Torah passage that I'm sure we've all heard, in which Ruth speaks to her mother-in-law Naomi, who is an Israelite, as the two return, widowed, alone, and impoverished from Moab to Israel. This is Ruth chapter 1, verse 16. And Ruth said, "Do not entreat me to leave you, to return from following you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." So to me, this beautiful story is another moving example of accepting blessings. I'm not going to go into the entire backstory of Naomi and Ruth. It's very complicated, but suffice it to say that Naomi has had a very rough life. She's lost a lot of her loved ones, almost all of them, and she suffered. And as a result, she is embracing suffering. She is kind of looking on the dark side of things. She's internalized all of the bad things that have happened to her. And now her beloved daughter-in-law is trying to offer her comfort and friendship, and she wants to reject that. She's saying, "Go away, don't come with me, don't follow me." But Ruth refuses to leave. She follows Ruth. She says, "Your people will be my people, your God will be my God. I'm going to stick with you," basically. And Naomi is forced to accept her love and her companionship. And eventually, the story does have a happy ending. Naomi helps Ruth find work. The women are able to survive and find food and thrive. Naomi counsels Ruth and towards marrying her cousin Boaz. And they reclaim lost property and family honor. And Ruth has a son whom Naomi loves like her own son. And this son is eventually the progenitor of the King David line. It's a very simplified version. The story has many layers and many lessons. It's very complicated. At times it's very problematic. And I encourage all of you on Shavuot to read the Megillah for yourself and do some thinking about the lessons therein. But for our purposes, I want us to look at what these two women teach us about love and friendship. Ruth teaches us that when we give love fully and freely, even if sometimes it feels like that love is being rejected, even if we feel like we're sending this love and affection out into the world and we're getting no returns, not only are we actually supporting a friend or a loved one in their time of need, but we're also opening ourselves up to future blessings, which we really can't possibly foresee. So we are opening to possibility. Naomi comes to teach us that when we receive love, even when we don't feel like we're in a place to receive love, when we let friends in and we accept the love and the support that they offer and they want to be there for us, even in moments when our lives can seem very dark and hopeless and that nothing can help and no one can help, then we can make it through. We can make it through even the most painful and challenging moments, and we can reach happiness on the other side. And again, we get to a place where we have these blessings that we just could never have known were coming. So it's a really beautiful story of female friendship, I think, and love and strength, which is a really cool thing to celebrate. So as we've seen, the main themes of Sivan are receiving and giving, making a covenant or commitment, blessings and harvest. So a note on this nature of growth and a note on the idea of nature and growth. Things are a little different here in the Southern Hemisphere. As Sharon mentioned, it is pretty cold and rainy and gross today. But in Israel and many other places on earth, this time of year is, a time of just explosion of bounty from nature. Crops, which were planted after Pesach, are beginning to be harvested. We're emerging from a time of laying fallow. of waiting into this time of extreme growth, of blossoming, flowering, bursting forth, fertility, renewal. This is like, it's happening. This is the time when we've finished our mourning, we've finished our waiting, we've finished our preparation, and we are here to receive the fruits of our labors. So for some of us in Sydney, maybe we relate to this a little bit less as a natural renewal because leaves are changing color, dropping off the trees, the weather is getting cooler, we're preparing for winter. And maybe it's more of a spiritual or emotional renewal. Maybe we can relate to it more that way. And in another way, we're kind of lucky enough to see that the blossoming and the blooming and opening of Sivan is correlating to the very gradual physical reopening of our world in terms of the lifting of some COVID restrictions, as is safe and prescribed by authorities. So what it means is that we literally have more freedom now to open our doors, to open our homes, our synagogues, our public places in limited ways and safe ways. But for those who can and for whom it is safe and healthy, we should take advantage of that, and we should renew our friendships and our relationships as we reemerge into the world. So I think basically what we're learning is that no matter what the situation is, where you live, nature-wise, COVID restriction-wise, this is the time to look to the future. We've done our reflection, we've done our inward gazing in ER, that was last month. Now in Sivan, we are opening our eyes to all of the tools and the resources that we've built and we have gathered over the past few months. And we're gonna think about, it's time to think about how we're gonna use them to fuel the future, our growth. And it's the perfect time to look around, to take stock of all the blessings and the abundance in our lives. The blessings of Torah, of love and friendship, the people around us, of health, of community. Not all of them seem so obvious at first, which is why it's so important to take a moment to identify them and feel gratitude and think about how we will put them to use to better ourselves and the world. So that's basically my shtick. We're gonna open up now, and I'd really love to hear from you ladies about how you relate to these ideas of Sivan and your plans for opening and growing into the future. So just a quick review, the ideas that we've talked about, the main ideas are receiving or accepting blessings, love and friendship, especially with other women, covenants or commitments, and the idea of harvest and growth.